Recently unearthed footage of Rand Paul from 2009. It's pretty exciting, and it could cause some major, I guess, perhaps ripples leading up to the Republican primaries. We know, Rand Paul, others like Chris Christie, they're sort of gearing up for the election, and so this could actually have some influence on that. If you remember back in 2012, let's see, David Corn at Mother Jones, he uncovered that footage of Mitt Romney, the 47% comment. Well, he's done it again. So here is Rand Paul in 2009 speaking to Republican students at Western Kentucky University, and he's talking about Dick Cheney and the war in Iraq, and listen to his theory.
There's a great YouTube of Dick Cheney in 1995 defending Bush #1, and he goes on for about 5 minutes. He's being interviewed, I think, by the American Enterprise Institute, and he says it would be a disaster, it'd be vastly expensive, it'd be a civil war, we'd have no exit strategy. He goes on and on for 5 minutes. Dick Cheney said it would be a bad idea, and that's why the first Bush didn't go into Baghdad. Dick Cheney then goes to work for Halliburton, makes hundreds of millions of dollars as their CEO. Next thing you know, he's back in government. It's a good idea to go into Iraq. The day after 9/11, George Tenet's going in the House, and Richard Pearl's coming out of the White House. And George Tenet should know more about intelligence than anybody in the world. And the first thing Richard Pearl says to him on the way out is, "We've got it, now we can go into Iraq." And George Tenet, who supposedly knows as much intelligence as anybody in the White House, says, "Well, don't we need to know that they have some connection to 9/11? He says it doesn't matter. It became an excuse. 9/11 became an excuse for a war that they already wanted in Iraq.
Well, Rand Paul, the Republican broken clock who's right twice a day. We do agree with him, maybe not twice a day, but twice a month we agree with him on some issues in a general sense on drones. But here, and this is a theory that, I mean, at colleges you probably hear young liberals espousing pretty often, probably in this program as well, but you don't expect Rand Paul necessarily to be speaking about this. So what do you think?
Well, this is pre-Senate run.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that he was intellectually honest at that time. What was this, 1999?
2009.
Sorry, 2009.
Yeah.
Okay. But it was pre-Senate run, and I think that since he has been sort of folded into the Republican Party, I don't know that he would actually say such things again.
I mean, it's possible. He is to a much greater extent than many of the other like the big name Republicans. He's a man of some principle, not always. Not like many young libertarians, unfortunately, think about him. But in some cases he is, and I think he's got a damn good point. I hadn't known that Dick Cheney said that back in 1995. Dick Cheney apparently not as much of an idiot back then. But when you pay a man a couple $100 million, it's easy to change his mind about some pretty significant things.
I guess it kind of makes you wonder, when this comes out, and when you first see it, I was thinking, okay, where is this going to fit into his political aspirations? The leaked video and who leaked it. And I know David Corn came up with it. And his last one was destruction for Mitt Romney, obviously, as we all know. That was one of the best ones, one of the best lines that really took down Mitt Romney from the whole campaign. So the first thing I think is, where's this work? And then you hear it's from 2009. Then you think it's 99 because of that hideous sweater he was wearing. That's why you thought that. By the way, I mean, I couldn't stop looking. It was horrible. It looked like carpet. Anyway.
You can't mistake that hair either.
So the first thing I was thinking was, oh, of course, he's trying to set himself up to detach himself from these warmongers that everyone's kind of tired of in the Republican Party, and maybe that's where it's going. I'm a little confused now. So it was leaked, David Corn came up with it. This isn't really destroying him. Maybe it would have destroyed him maybe in the primary as it's coming, but it's still too far away. Maybe it's perfect timing to where it's in the back of your head.
It could be, and there was another video in 2008, a speech he made, Rand Paul made in Montana, where he echoed basically the same idea. So this isn't something that like he's at the college and he just decides to rev up the students or something. Unfortunately, we really didn't get much of a reaction out of the students there. I wonder what those young college-age Republicans said in response to that in 2009.
I think a lot of them are coming around in the aspect of why a lot of people that call themselves libertarians, they're thinking, yeah, I still want small government, lower spending, but I don't care who you marry. It's leaning that way. So they're trying to have a hybrid of the Republican Party where they still feel they're fiscally responsible, and in something like war, they're like, well, that's kind of outrageous. Why exactly are we doing this again? And then it leads to also social issues. So I think there's a formulation of this group, and that's why he's speaking to college students. That's the people you target who still want to feel like they're their father's Republican son. But I don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah, and so it's kind of unfortunate that, like, so as you point out, he would say this back in 2009, but he's unlikely to say it now. I mean, he's willing to be pretty honest, but there's a certain line you don't cross. Yes, but it's not a crazy theory. It's not necessarily the case, but there's certainly a good amount of evidence to lead to someone believing that Halliburton and Dick Cheney's ties to that corporation had a pretty significant effect on their decision to go to war, their decision to exploit the tragedy of 9/11. And it sucks because it's not some random conspiracy that's disconnected from all of the other problems that our political system has. It is the problem our political system has, that corporations and well-connected rich individuals like Dick Cheney who have ties to those corporations are able to influence government policy, not towards the regulation of a chemical or something, but leading our country to war, to the longest war that we've ever had. I mean, the number of people who've died, the amount of money that's been spent on it, the trajectory of our country has been perhaps irreparably changed because of these wars.
Well,
and yet the explanation for why that's the case, you can't say that in polite society. You can't say that and still be a responsible politician.
Which is bullshit, because of course I think,
exactly.
yeah, you know, and that's, of course you can say bullshit. That. It is bullshit, but you know, there are plenty of reasons to go around. You know, I think that there was the opportunism of going in and taking over Iraq and getting access to those oil fields. I think that's been pretty definitively covered in many documentaries that have uncovered a lot of recent documents that have been released. That, you know, that's really sort of the foundation, but there's plenty of room to go around for other ways to profit off of going to war. War is the United States' greatest export. Yeah. You know, that's what our corporations, our biggest corporations, make the most money out of, is war and the machinations of war and the support of war. So, you know, I'd be shocked, really shocked and pleasantly shocked if Rand Paul actually continued to, you know, follow up and follow along with what he said back in this 2009 video, but I doubt that's going to happen.
On this issue of foreign policy with Rand Paul and the libertarians, they're isolationists. And in this instance, I agree with them. Like, we should not have done all of that because those are bad wars. But the problem with going to bad wars is that it often prevents you from going into good wars later as the country becomes more and more war weary. Yeah. So I'm not suggesting that we should invade Russia or have a war with Russia, but I'm just saying history keeps repeating itself. So in World War II, it seems like a bunch of nations just jumped in. Hey, you know, we're allies, they're allies, we're going to all just jump in. And then World War II came around and everyone was so hesitant to go to war, and they let Hitler gobble up huge swaths of Europe before anyone did anything. Yeah. Again, I'm not making a parallel here. I'm just saying that when you do shitty wars and you suck up the country's resources and the country is sick and tired of it, then that provides an opening for some madman somewhere else in the world to take advantage because we're just war weary.